Elizabeth. I will call the meeting to order. So first, if you would all rise, and I will say the Pledge of Allegiance. You don't have to join in. It gets a little confusing that way. You can think it along with me. So if you could all rise. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could please remain standing for the statement of values, and I will ask Vice Chair Priya if she could read the statement of values. You're on mute, Priya.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair Kuru. You may be seated, and Elizabeth, if you would call the roll, please.
Chair Biagini,
Present.
Commissioner Chair Kuru,
Here.
Commissioner Hero, Commissioner Wang,
Here.
Commissioner Akazi,
Present.
Commissioner Salim,
Here.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Here.
Thank you.
Motion to excuse Commissioner Hero.
Second.
Okay,
Priya.
there's a motion and a second to excuse Commissioner Hero. Can we
And
go
I'm
through
sorry, the
the-
second was Commissioner Chair
Priya.
Kuru.
Priya.
Yes.
Okay, wait for Elizabeth to take the roll.
So the motion is to excuse Commissioner Hero from tonight's meeting.
Yeah.
Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Kuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Akazi,
Yes.
Commissioner Salim,
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, on the declaration of commission procedures, Priya, if you could read those, please.
Sure. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 2 minutes. The applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. And that ends the declaration of procedures.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair Kuru. Now, to further explain, copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on tonight's agenda are available from the Planning Division office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting, and they are also available online. So moving into continuances and exceptions, this is the part of the meeting that allows for applicants, members of the public, or other interested parties to request an item to be continued without a hearing, withdrawn, or taken out of order. Are there any requests, applicants, the public, or the commission for a continuance or exception for any of the items on tonight's agenda?
We have no requests.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Now the full commission isn't here, so let me state this. The planning commission has 7 members. Whenever the full commission is not present, applicants have the option to continue their item to another meeting. I don't know that any applicant has said they want to continue their item. Have they, Elizabeth?
Correct. No, we've not had any requests. for
All right,
continuance.
great. Then we're going to move to the consent calendar. Priya, if you could read the procedure.
The procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted, approved, or adopted by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation. If any member of the Planning Commission staff, the applicant, or a member of the public wishes to comment on a consent calendar item or would like the item to be heard on the regular agenda, please make this request now. Items listed on today's consent calendar are 1A, Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 25th, 2021, special meeting. 1B, action on use permit for ABC license type 47 for Happy Hooligans Restaurant at 1686 Lafayette Street.
Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I have a request and a recuse,
Okay,
Chair. So I'd like to recuse myself from the meeting minutes since I was not present. And I do have a request to just add a minor condition which used to be there for these use permits, if you allow it, or we can pull this off consent calendar and I can state it then. I'll look to staff to guide us.
I would recommend pull it.
Pull
Pull
it?
it?
Okay.
okay. Then that would be item 1B, right?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a motion to, would this be appropriate, Sandra? Motion to accept for the consent calendar alone, and then we can deal with the second item.
Yes, this now is the motion on just one.
All right, I move to accept the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. If we could take the vote. Elizabeth, please. Call for the vote.
So this motion is to approve item 1A.
Yes.
Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru.
Recuse?
Sorry, you did say that. Thank you. Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
yes.
Commissioner Salam,
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. At this point, you know, staff, I'm going to ask for your help on this. We discuss item 1B now or go into public presentations to have that discussion?
We normally move it to the public hearing item section.
All right. Okay,
We
so,
can take that first. After
all
we
right.
read.
It'll go to public hearing. Then what we'll do now is public presentations. Are there any members of the public that would like to briefly address the commission on any item that is not on the agenda?
If there is any member of the public, they should signify by using the raise your hand tool. And the host will allow you to speak. There will be a time limit of 2 minutes as well.
Thank you, Gloria. Give it a bit. Are we
We
seeing
do
anyone
not have any
interested?
requests to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we will go ahead and move on to public hearing items. The first item that we will talk about then is the item that was pulled, 1B, action on use permit for ABC license type 47 for Happy Hooligans Restaurant at 1686 Lafayette Street. And Priya, you have the floor on that.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is really simple. And I recall these, and I noticed even in the last meeting's agenda, I did look at the agenda, that we did not include the hours of operation. Is there a reason why we have stopped using the hours of operation as a condition of approval?
I don't think so. It's just that the liquor, normally liquor is regulated the time it can be served by the state. So there is, but if the commission, because of the use permit, is a discretionary approval, if the commission wants to restrict the hours, you're able to. I think it's just important to check with the applicant. Sometimes, the business operations change, clientele, different economic conditions exist that where they may need some flexibility. So sometimes limiting the hours is challenging because then they would require an amendment to the use permit, but you can certainly limit them.
I was just going off of the applicant's letter, and it does say that their hours of operation are 11:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Yes.
And I'm more cautious about late night liquor served, so that's helpful for public and for awareness and future references. If they do need to, for additional hours being open, then they do need to come back.
Okay, and just to clarify that, they have, the liquor license requires that they actually serve food, so it can't be used exclusively like a bar type use. That would need a different license. So maybe if the applicant for any reason wants to consider expanded hours, then they should make that request known now. Otherwise, the cost is 50% of the normal use permit fee, so it would be a considerable expense to amend the hours. So if they have any feedback they'd like to give us for your consideration, I would recommend that they provide that at this opportunity.
Do we
So-
have the applicant on waiting in the audience in attendance?
I do not see applicant Binvo or Kevin Young in the attendees list.
In that case, I'm just going to make the motion to add the condition and, allow the applicant to come back and if there's a need to clarify at the next meeting, we can do so.
And Madam Chair, because we pulled this item, I think it'd be appropriate just to double check to see if any member of the public wants to speak on this item at this time. They should raise their hand.
Point well taken. Do we have any member of the public who'd like to speak on the item?
No hands are raised.
All right, well then, back to you, Priya. I'm wondering if this would be the appropriate time for you to make a motion, and I'm thinking, I'm sorry.
We'll need to close the public comment period of the meeting, and you can just do that by a voice vote.
Would there be any objections to closing the public hearing? If so, speak now. No objections, so it sounds like it's okay to go ahead and close public discussion. Then back
I
to
make
you,
the
Priya.
motion. I make the motion to approve the use permit with ABC license with the added condition on the hours of operation, 7 days a week, 11:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Thank you, Chair.
Do I hear a second?
I can second that.
Okay, it sounds like Bhatnagar seconded it.
No, it was Commissioner Wang.
Wang, okay, sorry. Then we can go, if there's no other discussion, can we go to the vote? I don't see any hands up from my fellow commissioners, so I'm assuming we can go to the
Yes,
vote.
I'm getting it ready right now.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth.
So the motion is to approve item 1B and to add conditions of operation hours. Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Akazi,
Yes.
Commissioner Salam,
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion passes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And let me just apologize up front for a noisy dog that I have. I think she's calmed down now. Sorry. All right, then let's move to item 2, which is an action to amend the existing use permit for outdoor activity to expand the current child daycare facility at 2931 El Camino Real. Staff? Do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, there
Yes.
is, and Namisha Agrawal will be giving this presentation.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank
I
you,
know
Madam Chair. And good evening, Commissioners. This is Namisha Agrawal, Associate Planner and Project Manager for this project. As mentioned earlier. Okay. This request is to amend the existing use permit for outdoor activity associated with the child daycare preschool facility to allow the expansion of the existing facility and modify the existing outdoor activity on 2 contiguous parcels located at 2931 El Camino Real. This is the site. It's approximately 1.33 acre site, 58,000 square feet. General plan designation is community mixed use. And the zoning is thoroughfare commercial, so CT. The project site is located on the north side of El Camino Real between Kylie and Alpine Avenue. And it is surrounded by single family uses to the north. A legal non-conforming 2-story 6-unit apartment is located to the east of the site, in the behind, and in the front is the 1-story commercial use. To the west is also 1-story commercial uses on this site. The site also has an existing non-conforming shed to the back, which is not part of the project. And so the existing facility occupies and leases basically approximately 41,000 square feet of the space. A little bit of a background. So childcare facilities are an allowed use in the commercial thoroughfare zoning district. However, they do require any kind of outdoor activity that is associated with the permitted use requires a use permit. This is a site that was previously occupied by Summerwinds Nursery. And it was vacant for a while when the applicant proposed this use back in 2018. On October 24, 2018, Planning Commission approved a use permit to allow 12,650 square foot outdoor activity associated with the proposed child daycare preschool facility. And so that was a little bit of a background. Sorry, trying to adjust my screen at the same time. Here is the street view of the site. So this is the outdoor playground area, and this is the existing school facility. So a little bit about the existing facility. Here is the site plan to the right. In 2018, the applicant applied for a building permit to obtain building permits for interior remodel of the existing 8,900 square feet, a 1-story building to create 7 classrooms, offices, and reception area. So this facility here is the existing facility. They also added a small exterior addition of bathroom facilities to be accessed from the outdoor playground area. They created a 12,650 square feet outdoor activity area. And there's a drop-off area to the front. The site is accessed by 2 driveways, one over here and the other here. The drop-off area has a total of 7 parking spaces, including the accessible stalls. And a total parking spaces on the site are 28, which exceeds the required 9 parking spaces. The requirement for this kind of a facility, for this size facility, is 9 parking spaces. So the existing facility exceeds that requirement. A total of 167 children are supposed to be attending this facility, are allowed on the site. 70 full-time and 97 part-time students. The schedules are staggered. So the schedules are staggered. And so at a given time, a maximum of 120 students or children are present at the site. Back into 2018, when the applicants occupied the site, they added a trash enclosure and did some landscape improvements on the site. On the site, a total of 9 to 12 staff members are present on the site, and the facility operation times are 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. There have not been any reported violations on the existing facility since its operation. Here is a site plan. So this is the existing facility, the drop-off area. Here is El Camino Real, the outdoor playground area, and the trash enclosure. And this is the non-conforming shed, which is not part of the project. So the applicant is now proposing to expand this facility by adding a 4,307 square foot modular building, more like portable classrooms that would house 5 classrooms, offices, and reception area, and a kitchen. They would also modify the existing outdoor activity area to be 11,700 square feet, which would meet the state requirements for an outdoor activity area. 7 parking spaces will be provided to the rear, and it will have its own separate drop-off zone. And they would expand and now have a total of 44 parking spaces on site. This expansion would add additional 73 children, 48 full-time and 25 part-time. Also additional 9 to 12 staff members would be added to the facility, and the hours of operation remain the same. So just looking back at the site plan again. So this is the existing facility. Here is El Camino Real, and this building, the new extension building, would go right behind the existing building. And the drop-off zone is to the back, whereas the existing building utilizes the drop-off zone to the front. So here is a picture of what, like a sample picture of what it would look like. Here's to the left. So overall, with the expansion, the whole child daycare facility will have 2 buildings, one to the front, a 9,000 square feet building, a modular building to the back, 2 drop-off zones, one to the front, the other to the back, a total of 12 classrooms, 5 offices, reception area, and a kitchen in each of the buildings, an outdoor activity area, a total of 11,700 square feet, 44 parking spaces, a total of 240 children. That includes 118 full-time and 122 part-time students, and 18 to 24 staff members, and the hours of operation, as I mentioned earlier, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and closed on holidays and weekends. So this child daycare facility will have, currently also has staggered hours, staggered schedule for the children. And this is kind of like a table explaining their staggered schedule, as you would see anytime between 8 a.m. and 9:30 p.m. in the morning. And then there is the after school kids who come at around 1:30. And similarly, at the pickup time has been staggered. Just summarizing the project, the general plan designation is community mixed use, zoning district is thoroughfare commercial. It's a 58,000 square foot site, but the project utilizes or leases part of it. And there's an existing 9,000 square foot building, and there will be a additional 4,307 square foot extension building. The shed located to the rear is not within the scope of this project, and the outdoor activity area would be modified from its current 12,650 square feet to 11,700 square feet. The number of stories remain the same, and a total of 44 parking spaces will be provided, whereas 17 spaces are required per the zoning code. The current facility also provides the required bicycle spaces, and no additional bicycle spaces are required with the expansion. Here are the elevations. So as I mentioned, the facility would not be very visible from the side because it is located behind the existing building. But here are the west and the east elevations from the sides. So it shows the existing preschool and the proposed facility and the storage building, which is not part of the project. The applicant has provided a trip generation analysis that was prepared by Hexagon Transportation Consultants. And the analysis concluded that the project would generate fewer than 100 peak hour trips, which is basically the threshold of requiring additional traffic studies. And therefore, the conclusion was that additional traffic studies are not necessary. The applicants also submitted a noise study to analyze the impacts from the new building to the adjacent residential development, and found that the noise levels would be within the allowable limits indicated in the general plan. No public comments have been received on the project, either in support or opposition of the project. And as I mentioned earlier, there are no reported violations or service notices on the existing facility. Staff recommendation is to adopt a resolution to approve the amendment to the existing use permit for outdoor activity associated with the child daycare facility at 2931 El Camino Real. So that concludes the staff presentation. I am available for any questions that you may have. The applicant is present here as well, and they can present or add to this information. Thank you.
You're on mute, Chair.
Thank you. We have hands up for questions. I'll start with, I'm not sure who came up first, but Priya and then Lance, if that's all right.
Mine is really quick. Thank you, Chair. So question to staff, what is the actual ratio for parking? Is it based on square footage or per student?
It's actually based on the number of classrooms and offices. So requirement is one space per office or classroom. So
one space per classroom?
One space per classroom, yeah. That's the zoning code requirement.
That seems, so a class could have 100 students?
The requirements is based in the zoning code, and I can look that up, but I think it is based on the number of classrooms, and I think it says no less than 3 spaces or something like that.
Correct. And Commissioner Chirukuri, just to mention that the childcare use is an allowed use, so we don't get into the operational requirements. It's just as long as they meet the required parking. Again, we don't get into operations, or they're not conditional since it's.
Yeah, but it makes no sense in my mind, at least, if you have per classroom, and we're talking to the zoning ordinance here, if it's 1 per classroom, but there's no threshold operationally, so you could pack 1 large classroom having 100 students and 1 parking spot?
Well, I mean, I think technically that might be possible, but then the number of children, there's a ratio, I think, based on the community care licensing, and the state also regulates these uses. So that's how the cap on the number of children comes about. It's also a teacher-child ratio. But again, these are drop-off. People aren't parking and staying there. This is a drop-off situation. But again, these are, we can't refute the zoning code since this is already adopted by council. So it's just really a matter of application.
I know, I'm bringing it up more because operationally, and I see the 44, but for future reference, I live right across the school. And I've looked at zoning ordinances, typically it's like a hospital, either a bed or a, so for me, a future state ratification on a zoning ordinance should be, it can be just a classroom. We need to look at that more closely. But if it looks at the number of students, it does generate 97 trips, barely short of 100 trips. So I'm trying to confirm the parking sufficiency here. So I'm going back to the allocation. That's what I'm trying to understand. What is the zoning ratio? And if it's 1 per classroom, and they need only 9, why any, if at all? But then is 44 sufficient? That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah, so to answer your question, so with the 12 classrooms and 5 office spaces, so the requirement, and I'm reading from the zoning code, it requires 1 space per classroom or office, but in no case less than 3 spaces. So that's for, like, you know, it kind of covers like smaller daycare facilities kind of structure.
And how is that different from a school? So I know you're putting it into the category of a daycare, but could you look at the ordinance and check for a school then? Because
yeah, this is the requirement for a nursery or a preschool.
Which makes sense. Mm-hmm. What about for a school, a regular school?
There is no separate requirement or separate section in the zoning code.
For a school?
For the parking permits,
yeah,
yes.
But I want to explain, that's because that's regulated by the state. It's not subject to the zoning code. So
no, there are private schools that would still probably need to come under.
Mm-hmm.
That makes, so not all schools, like there are residential schools, there's Waldorfs, there's all sorts of other schools that still come under the classification of a school. You wouldn't call that a preschool.
Yeah, but this is specifically related to nursery or preschool.
And just to add a bit of clarification, we do start requiring more spaces when the students are older. So the 1 parking space for each classroom applies to nursery, elementary, and intermediate, whether public or private. But when it comes to high schools, colleges, and universities, then we require 1 space for each 10 students attending classes.
Okay, that was the helpful clarification, but I feel that the zoning ordinance is inadequate in making that, because you could have 1 large classroom with 50 students and you would have 1 parking spot.
I think Namita read the code that there's the minimum also of 3 spaces.
Still 3 parking spots still, I mean, I know, because when you have elementary or little kids, you will take your time, drop the child, you're going to go in. It's not like a turnaround. It's not like a middle school where you're just driving by. When it comes to especially preschool, you're going to take time to walk your child, talk to the teacher, make sure they're well, handled. And then by the time you come out, that can take, a few, if not pack up parking challenges. And I know it because I'm right across the school. But that's just the nature of this question. I don't want to delve too much. I'm in support of this. I've used this site for summer wins when it was a nursery and it was lying vacant for a while. So I completely encourage the reuse of this property, and the school is one of the most needed in our city. So I appreciate the use, and I don't have an objection to the actual recommendation. I'm just concerned that the parking zoning standard is substantially low. Okay, I yield, Chair. Thank you.
And just to mention that the business has been in operation for a few years. This is just an addition to it. So we have not had any complaints that I know of that we've received regarding the parking, and it's got substantially more than is required. So
I understand. And as I said, I'm in this project context, it makes sense. I'm not denying it, but I'm pointing to the discrepancy, the actual insignificant, or the challenge in the zoning ordinance classification.
Thank you, Commissioner Terakuru. Next, we have Commissioner Salim and then Commissioner Ikezi.
Okay, thank you. I think this is a little deja vu since we recently reviewed outdoor for daycare or preschool. And I think it's probably important to note that this facility has a substantially better solution for their safety of the students. And I don't know if the presentation, I know the presentation didn't cover it, but it should get mentioned about some of the car intrusion prevention, you know, the posts that are out there, the heavy duty nature of the fence. It's probably worthy of note that this is a good example for other similar facilities on how to do outdoor right. I don't know, did the floor plan show the barriers that were in place for the outdoor play area?
Yes, yes, Commissioner Salim. So going back to the
Might be
floor
worth just
plan
taking
here.
a peek at that, because I think that's going to allay a lot of fears that a lot of commissioners had previously on the safety of the kids when they're outside, and there's going to be a lot more of them in this facility.
Yeah, so the Summerwinds nursery already had a 8-foot high wrought iron fence in place. And the applicants added another 4-foot high fence to the rear just to separate out the areas. I did not include that in the presentation just because it's already been in place and working well. They did, if you look at the pictures here, the site images, we did ask them to screen the bottom half so that the children, when they are playing, they are not visible from the street. So that's in place as well.
Yeah, it's a very good plan. Others have also, I've driven by it. I know others on the commission have as well, and it's a very nice facility. So I think I could be very comfortable approving additional space. I'm still also worried that, you know, it's on El Camino, you're going to get fumes, you're going to get the traffic noise, you're going to get all of the things that were negative about having a facility like this directly adjacent to a major thoroughfare. But it is set back, the play area is well divided out, and it's away from the primary traffic. So I'm pretty fairly inclined for this one. Anyway, I didn't really have any questions. I was more making a statement that people should consider this when they look at the plan for this. It's actually an exceptional example, a good example. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salim. Commissioner Ikezi.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate Commissioner Salim's questions, because I was thinking of the other project we reviewed last month also. So can you tell me a little bit more about the modular buildings? Are they similar to the buildings I see, office buildings I see in some of the schools in the Santa Clara district? Are they going to be like a permanent kind of structure?
They're going to be like modular classrooms that we see in public schools. And the applicants are here. They can share more information about that.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. Let's see. Well, I had my hand up. I don't see any other hands up right now. So before we go to the applicant, I just wanted to make a comment that tax base, Commissioner Salam, I actually still have fresh in my mind discussions that the commission has had in the past on other childcare centers. I'm familiar with that location, but I drove by it to have another look. And I think it is actually a great example of how to, in terms of the fencing being adequate, that should some car careen, it's not going to be able to get into the where the children are playing easily at all. I like the fact that they've done screening so you can't even see the children. And I am, in support of this project because I think it's very well done and definitely needed. And that's the end of my comments. If there's no other commissioners with questions for staff, then we can move to the applicant. Applicant has 10 minutes to present. Do we have the applicant here to also talk?
Hello, this is Devin. Good afternoon to everyone.
Do you want the video on?
Yeah, we should. Good afternoon to everyone. We are glad that for the positive comments from you. And there was a clarification required about the building material and how the building will look like. I assume Ray, our architect, is in the meeting, and he can give more details about the look and feel of these modular buildings. Ray, please go ahead.
I don't know how.
I know he is there.
Yeah.
He can share.
Oh, sure. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah, so basically what Devon had wanted to do was match the existing building, and that I think we did a pretty good job of using all the same materials. It's all cement plaster. It's all the windows, frames and doors are all the same fenestration details. It's all the same thing, and the trim, there's a simple trim around the existing building where at the top where the roof is, and we echoed the same thing. It's basically the same language, just repeated over, so the whole complex will be contiguous.
Just to add a bit, Ray, do you have some pictures of that you can share right now available, or?
That might be because of what I just did to get this thing to work, moving to a different computer, I may not be able to. If you give me a moment, I'll try to find something on a zip drive that I can put on.
While you do that, I'm also searching in my list to see where. Yeah. While Ray searches for more details, I have one picture that that I can share with you.
But actually, Nimisha already shared this.
Yeah.
This image was there in her presentation.
Oh, I see.
Devin, you should be able to share your screen if you click on the share screen button.
Yes, I will. Give me one sec.
It's quick, share.
Yep, I hope you can see one picture here. Are you able to see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay, so this is how this, I have two pictures with me, and one of them, Nimisha presented, I can pull it up again. The other one, this is how the back of it could look like. This is taken from another place where, I mean, this is one of the pictures that the modular designer had shared with us. So this is how one of them will look like, and the other one, the front of it will look like somewhat like this. I don't know whether it gives enough clarity, but if needed, we can produce more after the meeting. We're talking to the builder.
Oh no, it provides a lot of, it shows clearly what it's going to look like. Thank you very much. So are these like prefabricated and going to be brought in, or is this going to be constructed?
Correct.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did the applicant need more time? Are we still waiting for Ray to see if he could put something up?
I'm trying, that's a better picture than what I found so far. I
All
apologize.
I suspect you satisfied Commissioner Ikezi's question.
Yes, very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Okay, was there more you wanted to share with us?
Not from my end.
Okay. Then let's move to any other questions that the commissioners may want to ask of the applicant. There we go. Okay, we have Commissioner Cherukuru followed by Commissioner Bhatnagar.
I have only good comments. Thank you for applying, and just want to make sure that the traffic doesn't come over Spurge. You do have a good site. It is tucked away, very safe, and I'm so glad that you're doing this for our city. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving the opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru. Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes, thank you, Chair. To the applicants, really just a forward-looking question, not particularly anything to do with what you are applying for. And by the way, like other commissioners, I think it's straightforward to support it. What are your growth plans? Is that shed in the back? That is, I heard the word non-conforming. So just trying to understand, is there some concern with respect to safety, or what makes it non-conforming? And do you have some plans to maybe utilize that area as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
So we are leasing this whole area from Nat Retail Partners, and that building at the non-conforming building at the back was there as we all know, it was a nursery in the past, a planned nursery, and they were using it for soil, to keep the soil, extra
Just
soil or whatever.
The soil shed. I don't know what they were keeping.
Yeah, and currently we haven't leased that part out, and it is left as a vacant shed. And at a later point, if we lease that out from Nat Retail Partners, it'll be primarily used as storage shed. Some of the extra classroom fixtures and books and things like that in that shed. That's one possibility. Another possibility could be just demolish that and make more parking spaces. These are the two possibilities we can envision there, but that's not there in the current scope. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bhatnagar. I have just a comment that I want to thank the applicant for what I think is a great site and a great job and a safe job and a needed place for children. So I'm familiar with the shed, and I have to agree with you. You have built-in storage back there. In any event, I understand that's not part of the use permit questions now. So, but I like how you're thinking about future potential use for it. I am fully in support of this.
Thank you,
That's
Chair.
the conclusion of my comments. I don't see any other hands up from commissioners. I don't know that there's a requirement for any other. Oh, wait, I see Commissioner Ikezi.
I just have one quick question. Thank you, Chair. So did you choose the modular building so to avoid construction work and disrupting a classroom? Was that the main motivation?
Two reasons. One is what you said is exactly right. So modular buildings are a lot easy to install and very less interruption for the existing classes. Secondly, the cost of building comes down almost about 40% down if you go for the modular.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. Waiting to see if there are any other hands up anywhere, and I don't see any. Elizabeth, do you? Because otherwise, I think we are at the.
Sorry, Chair. Commissioner Cherukuru does have her hand up.
I'm so sorry, Commissioner Cherukuru.
And this may be to both either staff and or client. Are there any requirements for it to be all electric? Or like for lighting, or what is the new climate requirements and
they
other?
follow Title 24, but there's no all electric for right at this point. That's being considered.
I would just say, this is Rena Brio, that actually at the September 28th council meeting, the council will be considering an all electric reach code.
And in which case, would this be?
I would have to read the provisions. Quite frankly, I don't know at this time off the top of my head what the grandfather provisions are, and whether or not this is applicable. But shortly we'll have the agenda posted, and if you're interested, you can see whether or not this would be an applicable project.
Got it. Thank you, Rena. Thanks for that clarification, and just letting the client know that it's always good and good practice, and code is going to come soon thereafter to consider sustainable, green, all electric options in your construction.
Absolutely. And I think that is the way it is going to be. The air conditioning is definitely going to be all electric. We can, and the existing heating facility, water heater is electric, and the new one is going to be electric. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much for considering that.
For two reasons. One is it minimizes, apart from the climate changes, those reasonings, it minimizes the hazard for the kids as well.
Great thought. Great thought. Thank you for helping that also for us, and truly appreciate the consideration. Thanks. I yield, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru. It appears that there are now no more hands up, so I think this would be the appropriate time to close public hearing. Let me try to simplify this. Are there any objections to closing public hearing?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I don't think we've actually opened it. We haven't asked for members of the public.
Oh, correct. Thank you, Xander, for keeping me on the straight and narrow. Public hearing time. Do we have anyone who is looking to comment? Elizabeth?
No, we don't have any hands up for anyone to speak.
Okay. I'm stalling a bit in case somebody's thinking, how do I do that? Doesn't appear to be, so no. Xander will continue to keep me on the straight and narrow. I would think this then would be the appropriate time to close public hearing, and to simplify it, let me just put it this way. Are there any objections to closing public hearing? Hearing none, then the public hearing is now closed, and we can move back to discussion among the commissioners. Do I have any hands up for discussion?
I can make the motion.
That would be great.
Thank you, Chair. I move that we adopt the resolution approving the outdoor activity change to the existing use permit.
I could second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we will give Elizabeth a moment to be able to call the roll.
Thank you. The vote is to approve staff recommendation. Chair Biagini,
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuru,
Yes.
Commissioner Wang,
Yes.
Commissioner Casey,
Yes.
Commissioner Salam,
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Yes.
Thank you. And the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Then we will move into the next item, item number 3, which is a study session on the housing element update. And staff, we have a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John Davidson with the Planning Division. Let me share my screen here. So yeah, tonight we'll be talking about the housing element update process, and we advance the slide. The goals of the study session are to talk through the state requirements for our housing element update, which is due in January 2023, share information on the regional housing needs allocation process, talk through our strategies for providing housing, and update the Planning Commission on our affordable housing ordinance and how we might change that to encourage or to require more affordable housing production, and to review next steps. So as all of you planning commissioners know, we have a general plan with 7 required elements, and we're actually on the hook to add an additional element as part of this general plan update cycle. And the housing element is unique among our 7 required elements in that it has to be reviewed and approved by the state Division of Housing and Community Development. So there is oversight by the state on this one particular article. We have to update our housing element every 8 years. Our last housing element was certified in 2015, and the next one's due at the beginning of 2023. So as a part of this housing element update, because we're making updates to 2 elements, we're also required to do what's called an environmental justice element that talks about the objectives and policies to reduce health risks in disadvantaged communities. And one of our big areas for our disadvantaged community is right along Lafayette Street. We can talk about that more if you want. Climate adaptation and resilience policies we also need to add, which are going to be included in our climate action plan update, which will be likely completed before the housing element is completed. And we should also include additional policies for our safety element relating to climate change and fire hazards. So our housing element has a number of required components to it, including a review of the previous housing element, goals, programs, and policies for housing production, a description of our housing needs, and all of the constraints that are related, both governmental and non-governmental, in terms of what would limit housing in the city of Santa Clara. And really the most important thing is that we have what's called a sites inventory that gives the state an idea of whether or not we have available sites to produce the housing that's being required by the state. So as part of the regional housing needs allocation, the state HCD determines the regional housing needs by affordability levels for the planning cycle. And our local regional planning agency, the Association of Bay Area Governments, allocates a share of that regional housing need to every jurisdiction. And then local jurisdictions, all of the Bay Area at this point is on the hook to update their housing elements by January 2023. So finding a consultant right now in the Bay Area for the housing element is tough. So as part of the housing element, we also provide annual progress reports to the state to demonstrate our progress towards compliance towards that housing element cycle. So within our regional housing needs allocation, there are 4 income levels based on area median income. So ranging from very low and low income to moderate income, which straddles the area median, but is still considered affordable. And then also above market or market rate, which is above 120% of the area median income. So far in the current housing element cycle, which is the 5th cycle, so our RHNA target in the very left-hand column was a total of about 4,000 units, 4,100 units. And through 2020, we've done a good job of producing units, more than what's been required through 2022. So we've produced 4,800 units. And this is based on building permit issuance, but almost all of them are above moderate. Almost all of them are market rate. Only in 2019 and 2020 have we started to produce more affordable units, both as a result of the adoption of our affordable housing ordinance and the payment of fees that our housing division can use to help subsidize all affordable projects. So as far as the RHNA allocation process has gone, the ABAG comes up with a methodology for allotting units to each city, and they did that earlier in the year. The state then reviews our ABAG's methodology, and ABAG provides the regional housing needs allocation numbers in spring of this year, or has provided them. We will come up, or the final RHNA will be determined by the end of the year, but for now we have our illustrative housing numbers that we're working with. And so for comparison, the regional housing needs allocation for the year for us, for the city of Santa Clara, is 11,600 units, which is significantly more than the approximately 4,100 in the last housing element cycle. So as you see at the top, approximately 2.5 times as much for the entire Bay Area than was required in cycle 5. So for our share is about 9% of Santa Clara County. So 11,600 units total. So within that 11,600 units, less than half are above moderate, more than half are affordable. So yeah, similar to the previous cycle, but much greater numbers. And for comparison's sake, just to go back to the housing production numbers, this is 6-7 years of housing production. We've produced approximately 4,900 units, so approximately 700 units a year. So over, just thinking about the market and how much has been produced over the last 7 years, the 11,600 units could be difficult to produce, and it is based on the market. It's not based on the city producing housing units. But we are, the city is in charge of the regulations around providing housing, and so what we can do is we can increase our general plan growth capacity. We can help create new areas for residential uses through our long range plans, which has been particularly successful, especially our specific and precise plans and also our focus areas. We can do things like loosen some of our ADU regulations to help encourage those. We're also working on our zoning code update to make the development review process more streamlined and objective in nature. And there's also the question of whether or not we should be amending our housing ordinance to require more payment of additional fees or creation of more affordable units through the development process. So yeah, one of our major strategies is our long-range plans, including El Camino, eventually the downtown precise plan, Tasman East, which has already been approved, Patrick Henry Drive and Freedom Circle, which we're working on now. Between those 5 plan areas, we're thinking that we have a potential capacity of around 16,000 units. So that capacity that we're creating through the specific plan process is significant, or the majority component of our strategies towards providing the housing sites needed as required by the state in the RENA process. Accessory dwelling units are also a component, and we've had good success over the last few years. Single-family homeowners have created a number of accessory dwelling units through this ministerial process. In 2020, we had 71 building permits issued. So through an 8 or a 8-year cycle, that would translate to something like 550 dwelling units created. So an important component, but definitely not a majority of what's required to meet the RENA allocation. So these accessory dwelling units were changing, or we're updating our zoning code to include all of the state requirements and to make locally, or to update the local version of ADU law to be more compatible with the character of the city, especially one thing that city council people and people from the downtown have been interested in is 2-story ADUs. So we're working on that in the zoning code update. The good thing about accessory dwelling units is that they're inherently affordable because people who are developing them don't have to find land or pay for land to develop them. They can be developed on an existing single-family lot. And our partners at the Housing Collaborative, which is a county-wide consortium, are helping to provide support for additional ways to streamline the creation of accessory dwelling units, including things like template plans that can be adopted or that can be approved by our building division just over the counter. So lots of work going on there, and it is an important component of our strategy to create units. We're also working on the zoning code update to create a more streamlined process through objective design standards and reducing the need for plan development zonings by creating zoning districts that align with our general plan. These general plan, or these zoning designations, once we adopt the zoning ordinance, will be applied to the city as a whole when we adopt the zoning ordinance. And the last thing that I want to talk about is our affordable housing ordinance and what we've done over the past few years with that. Our first plan area that was subject to the affordable housing ordinance was Tasman East, where we had sort of a split affordability requirement to incentivize developers to come in early and develop in Tasman East. So it was originally a 10% affordability requirement for the initial phase, and then 15%, which is congruent to the rest of the city in phase 2. So the citywide affordable housing requirements are providing, or that projects with 10 or more units have to provide at least 15% of their units to be affordable at less than or equal to 100% of the area median income. And if you have less than 10 units, if a developer has less than 10 units, they can pay an in lieu fee. or provide the full inclusionary unit. The housing division is also willing to negotiate and try to figure out an alternative fulfillment that benefits the city. And some of the things that have happened with Tasman East, for instance, is that individual affordability requirements that individual developers have been consolidated into 100% affordable project. We also have commercial linkage fees. So when people build new commercial projects, they're also paying a fee to help support affordable housing. And those two revenue sources, the affordable, the in lieu fees for the partial units, plus the commercial linkage fees have really helped subsidize housing production with affordable developers. And at this point, we're looking at the feasibility of increasing our affordability requirements through a feasibility study, which has been going on for this year. So we're really working on it just to get information for ourselves so that we can be informed when we go in front of the council and propose amendments to our existing affordable ordinance. We don't have a specific proposal at this point, but the good thing is that the feasibility study is really providing an idea for us of whether or not changes to the ordinance are still allow what's feasibility, that projects can be developed and be profitable. One of the big things that our consultant EPS has done is to compare our ordinance to other cities and compared it across both rental and ownership. So this is a graph that's showing our relationship, or the city of Santa Clara's affordable housing ordinance and its requirements. So we're at the far left, we're in gray, meaning our requirement is 15% at moderate levels. And so our definition of moderate is up to 100% of AMI. Other cities, Campbell, for instance, other cities also do all moderate. Some cities are doing, greater levels or deeper levels of affordability than that, such as City of Los Altos, who are requiring all very low if it's a 10 or more unit project. A lot of cities are doing split affordability where they require some very low and some low income. For sale housing, most cities are requiring projects to provide 15% at moderate rates. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that ownership housing is really more useful for people who have the ability to provide a down payment. So that really falls towards the moderate end of the spectrum. It's really difficult to create affordable ownership housing at the lower income levels. So as part of the feasibility analysis, our consultant created what are called prototypes, that different kinds of housing that potentially could be built or are being built in the city, and testing those prototypes, those kinds of housing out, and seeing whether or not the feasibility, the ability to develop these types of housing would be affected by additional requirements to provide affordable housing. So the prototypes ran the gamut from mid-rise condos, so 4 stories or so, type 5 construction, which means all wood frame construction at 50 dwelling units the acre, which 10 years ago was pretty dense, but at this point, seeing what we've seen in especially Tasman East, is relatively moderate at this point. Mid-rise rental, also in that same range, but a little more dense, 65 dwelling units the acre, or more of the intermediate rise rental is more of what we've been seeing in especially our plan areas, where densities hover around 100 dwelling units the acre and are what's called type 3 construction. So construction that involves usually a podium or a deck, and it's usually 5 stories of wood frame construction over 2 stories of concrete. A lot of or type 3 also usually requires some sort of fireproofing for the upper stories, whether that's just thicker sheetrock or something else. Our consultant also did a prototype for high-rise construction, which is type 1 steel frame, and also townhouses, which are, seem to be the most feasible type of construction, ownership housing at about 20 dwelling units to the acre. So we're getting, we've gotten, over the past 6 months, we've gotten input from developers on our proposed or possible changes to our affordable housing ordinance. Had a study session in April, and now also getting feedback from the Planning Commission. Our next steps are not yet determined, but definitely looking forward to your input. So the things that we've learned through this feasibility study is that, most cities have similar or greater requirements. Some of the prototypes, some of the types of housing that we're seeing, especially now during the period of COVID, when it seems like both labor and materials costs are skyrocketing. Those, type 1 steel frame construction has always faced feasibility challenges, but now type 3 and type 5 are also becoming less and less feasible. And the addition of additional affordability requirements really might put these types of housing at their feasibility limit. Townhouses might be able to bear additional requirements. And we've seen other cities split out, including Mountain View, split out and have higher requirements for townhouses. So that might be one avenue. Some projects, so the state does allow what are called density bonuses, meaning if you can provide additional affordable housing, you can also build at higher densities than normal. So some projects might become feasible if they use a density bonus. And one of the things that, so that might be an avenue. But by increasing our inclusionary requirement, that could be something that has the side consequence of creating a situation where people do or developers do qualify for state density bonuses, and that could result in more market rate units that offset the increased costs of the inclusionary requirement. But the big underlying challenge is that for most for developers, density bonuses aren't helpful if it requires a change in construction type. So moving from type 3 to type 1 construction is a completely different ballgame and is not an apples to apples kind of transition. So for the affordable housing ordinance, we can do a couple of things. We can maintain our ordinance as is. We can proceed with changes, including increasing affordability levels based on our feasibility study. Or one thing we haven't really done is evaluate our commercial linkage fees, or explore incentives that could offset the impact of additional affordability requirements. So the last thing is to just talk about process and where we are. We're right now getting our sites inventory together. We again think that we have, through our plan areas, more than enough sites to provide the 11,600 or to provide space for the 11,600 units of housing. That's our major charge, to show that we have the sites available. We're working through fall and winter to get the draft housing element together. We'll be working with our consultant which is, which we'll be bringing on board in the near term. Having a community meeting and a draft housing element likely in the spring of 2022, and Planning Commission and City Council in the summer and fall, with certification by HCD in the winter prior to the 2023 deadline. So with that, I'm available for questions.
There we go. Thank you, John. I know we have some hands up. Commissioner Casey, and then Commissioner Salim, and then Commissioner Cherakuru, and then Commissioner Huang. So
thank you very
lots
much.
of questions.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, can I go?
Go ahead, yes.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So what I'm getting from the presentation, thank you very much for the, easy to follow presentation, is that with the zoning, our zoning and other laws, the way it is, we're not going to hit the affordability requirements by the state. Is that what I'm hearing right now?
No, that's not. Maybe I didn't put a fine enough point on it. It's just that the state asks for larger amounts of affordable housing units to be produced. It's difficult for the city to have control over that. I think the main thing is that we just have to have the sites available and to allow for developers to try to produce the affordable housing. The fact that we have funds now through the commercial linkage fee and in our affordable housing ordinance will help us subsidize more units, but it's always been a challenge for most jurisdictions to create the affordable housing units that the state is trying to prod us to creating through the RENA process.
Okay, so if we were to increase the affordable housing requirements for new developments, do we need to do another Nexus study to prove that it's a necessity? Or if the state requires it, then can we circumvent that?
Circumvent a Nexus study?
Yeah.
I think that we would have to do a Nexus study just to indicate the need for a fee, but Xander, correct me, or Rena, correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, I think that's just part of the process.
Right, I'd be happy to explain a little bit. If you recall, there was a case about 10 years ago called Palmer, which made it illegal for the city to impose inclusionary zoning without a Nexus study. Basically, all the cities across the state, including Santa Clara, had to stop doing inclusionary zoning. So we then went ahead and prepared a Nexus study so that we could institute a fee. And then just as we were about to finally institute that fee, the legislature changed the law and said, you can have inclusionary zoning, undoing that Palmer case. So the Nexus study that we adopted, we did complete it, was because of this litigation that took place about 10 years ago. The state has now made that go away. So we need to discuss it more internally, but the reason we did the Nexus study the first time was because of that litigation, and that litigation is no longer a problem. So it's possible we wouldn't need to do a Nexus study. We will need the feasibility study that we're already doing, because anytime we increase the affordability level above 15%, we have to get HCD to sign off on that as not creating too much of a burden on development. So probably not on the Nexus study, but we'll obviously have to make sure we're on the right path before we reach a final decision on that, and definitely on the feasibility study.
Okay, thank you. Third question, and I have a lot more questions, but this is my last question for now. I understand that the state is going after cities that are not generating enough housing by taking away their their state is preempting what the city's authority to limit to control the development. So is that something that is state going to go after cities for not producing affordable housing as well, or is it going to be limited to just the number of housing for now?
Yeah, I'm not sure how the state is going to enforce the requirements, the RENA requirements, but in the past, the state has not sanctioned cities. Most cities are in debt for the most affordable units, and the state hasn't sanctioned cities on that front. But yeah, not sure about the future. I mean, it's really been the Cupertinos of the world who haven't been producing any housing that the state's been tough on.
Oh, okay. So what does your consultant think? No.
So I'm going to defer
yeah.
to Rena on that one.
Yeah. So I think it's hard for us to predict what the state's going to do. So they've taken definitely a more aggressive approach. And I think we want to take these numbers incredibly seriously. And we are trying to plan in the way that they have asked us to plan, which is we have to demonstrate, that we can actually put units on sites. We also have to submit an annual progress report. But at this time, we don't have, what for the 2023 cycle. So that's a cycle that we're preparing, right, to submit for. We don't have what is at the end of that cycle, the consequence for not producing affordable. We're doing the best we can, recognizing as well, as we said, that if we increase our affordable housing ordinance, the state is also concerned that we may create an ordinance that might make it infeasible for projects to actually move forward. It's kind of unusual to think of it this way, but some communities have had a strategy that if they have such a high affordable housing ordinance requirement, then no project really can pencil and no projects get built. So that's something that the state is also concerned about. We certainly are interested in exploring whether or not we need to refresh the citywide ordinance. There might be an opportunity to have a little bit more. We're learning that our neighboring cities have gotten a little bit more, and we think it's worth exploring that. But these numbers are really high, and we're certainly needing to partner with funding sources. Our housing department's working with the county and the access to funds that they have to really facilitate affordable housing that isn't just about market rate doing inclusionary, but rather affordable housing developers coming in and targeting the very low to low income levels. So I don't think that we think we're going to get to those numbers solely in terms of affordable numbers solely by the citywide ordinance. We're going to have to do other creative tactics to try to get as close to those numbers as possible.
Okay, that answers my questions very fully. So thank you very much. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Ikezi. I'll put you down for round 2 when we get there, but I'll just make a quick comment before I move on to Commissioner Slime. A lot of this conversation, your questions and what Rena was talking about were the subject matters that those of us that went to the APA conference talked about in depth, but we'll talk about that when we get to the training reports later on. Commissioner Slime, you're next.
As usual, she stole my thunder and took and said exactly what I had planned on saying. We are going to talk about a lot of this, hopefully later at some detail level. Hopefully Xander will be ready and on deck when we bring up AB 9 and 10 and combine it with SB 35 and talk about some of the automatic development that's going to be possible in residential areas. I think it's somewhat dramatic, and they used it a little bit as a boogeyman to scare everybody into saying, oh my, the state's taking over all control of the city. Well, not quite, but the number of things that we have to look forward to are pretty substantial, and I think it's going to directly affect these numbers, especially around lot splitting with automatic approval of ADAs. We're going to have single family homes turned into 4-income unit properties without pretty much more than a rubber stamp from the city. And that kind of worries me as a commissioner, in the sense that our city could blow up completely without any kind of real plan and real support through the infrastructure. Like I said, we're going to get to that. But my questions here are expectations around these numbers changing again between now and 2031, which was the end date. Is there any possibility that they're going to either increase or decrease these target numbers before we even get to the point where we can address them substantially? And I think that's kind of an open question, is are we looking forward to a moving target, or is this locked down for the next 10 years?
No, these are the targets that we're looking at this point and structuring our housing element update around. Okay.
So there's no new laws that could come along or new allocations that they could pose on us and change up on the numbers?
No.
Okay, that's good to know, because if we were shooting a moving target, that would be impossible. I'm also really deeply worried that increase in total count is not going to be something that we as a city can absorb, but we'll find out, huh? All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Slayman. I'm sorry if I stole some of what you said. Let's move to Commissioner Cherukuru.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, John. It's always
Hello.
a joy to see my professor. So the rest of the world knows your products. I have 3 questions or comments. One is more fact-based. The numbers that you showed that Santa Clara has contributed, are these units built or approved? What is the actual metric that you're declaring as about 11,000 and some change?
The metric was building permits issued, the ones that you saw from the annual progress reports.
So they're issued, but we don't know what's actually built.
Correct. Or yeah, we would have to compile a different set of numbers to come up with building permits final. Those are issued.
Yeah, because I have a feeling that it's going to be less. Well, we can't have more, ideally, but
yeah, that would be a problem.
Yes. So, but I'd like to see the discrepancy in what's built. And again, as part of your feasibility studies, maybe we add that as a metric to say, hey, yes, we issued that many permits, but I don't know how COVID impacted, we don't know how many have actually changed, because when you draw, some of these might have changed into other uses as well. 2 is I didn't see anywhere in and I probably can extrapolate from a low income, but I didn't see any actual qualifier for homeless housing. And most cities are at least preempting or at least reacting to a lot of the homeless situation. And Santa Clara has a huge homeless population, while low income still assumes there is some income, either coming from n number of other charitable sources. I believe our city should have a plan in the housing element to address head-on the homeless housing need. And, tiny homes is a concept in San Jose. Several other cities are endorsing, many reacting to of course, the county program within our region. But I'd like to see an actual program in the housing element that addresses homeless housing. So that's 1. And 2, 3, how does the new form-based code that we are also driving, mixed use intent, drive the housing element numbers, where we are saying, okay, we want discretionary, we want mixed use, we want now a more fluid zoning. How does that change when it comes to housing element numbers? Are we assuming, zones that will be just housing without taking into consideration there's going to be a mixed use, albeit commercial, retail, office, whatever be the new trend? So those are my 3 comments, and I'll look to staff for response.
Yeah, so housing for or addressing homelessness through the housing element, those are goals and policies that we will have in the housing element update and have had in the past. So as far as form-based codes, one of the things that just as my understanding of form-based codes is that form-based codes will allow for additional certainty in the sense that if they help create objective design standards, that's something that will help streamline the housing production process. So it could be a net positive for housing production.
So our form-based, code, I don't know, and I probably am not recollecting, does it entail mixed use?
It depends on how we set up the code, but yeah, with the downtown precise plan, I would think it would have to include mixed use.
Okay, and in which case, it'll be interesting to see the juxtapose of the housing low income, mediate, moderate with the form-based code. So that's good. And then, yes, just the clarification and the future feasibility of the numbers that are actually built to date.
Yeah.
That's it.
Understood.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Cherukuru. Commissioner Huang?
Hi, thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, my question is, I look at the data for the current cycle, it's around 4,000 units. For the next cycle, it's 11,000. So it's increased a lot. How the next cycle, 20,000? I don't know. That's just a question. My second question is, you see we have mid-rise and high-rise. I think to address the housing issue, if it's increased so fast, maybe the high-rise is the solution. But with COVID, looks like it's easier to infect people with the high-rise. So any thoughts on that? Yeah, that's my two questions. Thank you.
As far as high-rise housing, I think that the main question for the city is just, again, feasibility. At this point, developers are not proposing high-rise housing or rarely proposing high-rise housing in the city of Santa Clara. It just hasn't worked out to be feasible at this point, that developers can't get the rents that they need to justify building type 1 housing. And that in itself might limit, or that's probably exacerbated by COVID and just the desire of people to live slightly more separate lives.
That satisfies your questions, Commissioner Huang?
Commissioner Huang, I was just going to add, we're going to be learning about the census and what the census has told us about California and the population growth and whether or not it met people's expectations. And I think that there are two ways of looking at that. Like, if California has lost people, I think people have analyzed why we have lost people. And it has a lot to do, many people think, with housing and lack of affordable housing and people being pushed out of California for that. So the state, I think, it's hard to predict where we're going to be a cycle from now. But some of these extreme measures, I think, are in response to the fact that we haven't done a very good job in years past. And maybe these extreme measures will actually result in more housing being built and make a positive impact. I mean, I think that's where some of the people who created these laws are hoping this will go. So it isn't necessarily that California is always being projected to grow. We haven't necessarily in the most recent census cycle seen the kind of growth that we were anticipating, but it might be because of these underlying issues of economics at play here. So I just thought I would share that with you. It really isn't anything that we can forecast right now, but I don't think it's necessarily that the next housing cycle is going to be 2 times what we have today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. Did you have another question, Commissioner Huang?
Oh, no. Yeah, thank you.
So let me lower my hand. And we're going to be going to, oh, wait a minute, Commissioner Bhatnagar. I don't think you've had an opportunity yet before we go to round 2. So you're on.
Thank you, Chair, but you had your hand up for a while and it's round 1 for you. So you're most welcome to take it.
All right, no problem. Then I'll go to you. So I kind of have 2 questions. One of them is almost more in the form of a comment. And that deals with stakeholder meetings. And that was on one of the slides that showed where we're at and where we're going, that there are going to be more public meetings, which I assume are part of what we're talking about when we say stakeholders coming up. Am I correct?
Correct.
All right, because I know we got a couple of letters, one from a resident over in the Lafayette Street area, DeJulio and the rest, and another from someone over in Bowers Plaza that brought up some big concerns that they had. And I think I could maybe synopsize it by saying, are you listening to what my concerns are? There will be another opportunity for them at these meetings. Am I correct? To
Correct.
Express their concerns? Okay, thank you. Then the other question I have, and this one, I think we're kind of nibbling all around the edges of this sandwich here. So let me just say what my concern is, and I'll let you and or Xander comment. And that is, we've had at least 2 bills or 3. I'm trying to track them all. SB 8, 9, and 10. At least 2 of those were signed legislation since the 16th. We have the PowerPoint that you presented. There's going to be a certain, I'm not sure the right word, but I'm going to say collision between plans that city have now with this overlapping legislation that's been signed, some of which does take away a certain amount of discretion. And my first question on that is your PowerPoint, was your PowerPoint set up before or after those bills were signed? That's my first question.
It was set up before, but I don't think that they're regarding, the good thing is that regarding SB 9 and 10, we can count units created through those 2 new laws towards housing element RENA goals. So on that level, it's a positive that when we're thinking about our sites inventory, SB 9 units can be counted.
And I think that's important because the fact of the matter being that we have been looking at that issue, perhaps anticipating what was coming in terms of how we built out. But I think more to the point, is this going to, I'm not sure how to say this, so help me out. With some of the mandates, is this going to have an impact on the feasibility of certain types of construction that may have been in the planning phases now as feasible or not feasible, but could change? In other words, the feasibility issues, are those going to be impacted by the 2 pieces of legislation that were just signed?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's, I think that's something that we'll have to look into a little bit more. I could imagine, there being a sharp demand or increase in demand for construction, for people in the construction trades and for building materials. And it might make, larger projects infeasible. It's something that we'll have to play out over the next few months. But yeah, it's tough to tell.
Yeah, thank you. Because I think it's going to behoove all of us to start thinking very strongly about how we collaborate and deal with these issues, because it's going to be real easy to get a little freaked out. So thank you very much for your presentation. I think we're well on our way with stakeholder meetings coming up again. That's the conclusion of my comments at this point. Commissioner Bhatnagar, and then we'll go into round 2.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So quick question, again, looking at the numbers, John, you presented the 2015 plan numbers for about 4,000 units. The original guidance seems to have been more weighted towards the affordable housing, and yet the actual construction or construction permits that were issued, as you stated, were much more towards the market rate housing in the past years up till 2020. Was that driven by city needs for higher property taxes, or in other words, we met the overall numbers requirement, but we did not meet the distribution as it was intended. So is that your understanding? And secondarily, are there any repercussions for the plan for 2023? Thank you.
So as far as how affordable housing gets produced, I mean, the good thing is that our affordable housing ordinance now requires 15% affordable units for all new construction projects over 10 units in size. So more affordable housing will be produced that way. The other thing that's good is that, like I mentioned earlier, we do have the commercial linkage fees that are being assessed on non-residential construction that our housing division is using to help subsidize 100% affordable housing. So those two things together have led to an increase in housing production over the last or affordable housing production over the last couple of years. I think that the big problem is that for affordable housing to happen, an affordable housing developer, outside of the stuff that's required through our ordinance as a part of market rate developments, all affordable projects require a deal to be put together and require some sort of a subsidy usually. And that in itself is really difficult to accomplish. Affordable housing developers are constantly trying to put deals together so that they can develop projects, but they're having trouble with feasibility as much as any other developer. So just that combination of finding subsidies and finding materials and construction that create a deal that's feasible or a proposal that's feasible is tough. And I think that's a big part of the reason that relatively little affordable housing has been produced.
Okay, well, thank you.
I could, if you'd like, I could answer the repercussions part of the question. So you asked, is there a repercussion for us not hitting those lower income numbers? And the answer is yes. You may have heard of the SB 35 streamlining process. That was a bill that was enacted in 2017. And that creates a ministerial approval process for housing developments where the city just basically has no discretion whatsoever when a housing development comes in. But whether or not this streamlining process applies depends on how well the city's doing in meeting its RENA goals. HCD has broken up the state into 3 buckets, if you will, of cities. So in the first bucket, we've got cities that are hitting all of their targets, all of their above moderate income targets and all their lower income targets. The second bucket is cities that are hitting their above moderate income but have done a bad job with the lower income. And then a third bucket where the city hasn't done anything, both above moderate and lower income, the city's not hitting those goals. You don't want to be in that third bucket. Santa Clara, like a lot of cities, is in the second bucket. And that's what we call the 50% cities. If a developer comes in with a project that is 50% affordable, then it will be subject to SB 35 streamlining, ministerial approval. If you're in that third bucket, you're subject to 10% affordability, which means if a project comes in and it's just 10% affordable, then it's got ministerial approval. Now, as you know, we have an affordable housing ordinance that requires our projects to be 15% affordable. So that would mean every housing development in the city of Santa Clara would be subject to ministerial approval with no discretionary approval. So we are in the 50% bucket because We have done a great job of hitting our above moderate numbers. We have not done such a good job with our lower income numbers for the reasons that John just described. Those are the current penalties. Every year, the state comes up with more. So we're going to keep doing our those numbers. But that's where we're at the moment.
Yes, thank you. Really good clarity there. So if I were to summarize, in the 2023 plan, the split was more 50-50, right? 50% of the unit should be affordable and the other 50 can be market rate. But as you just said, the ordinances only require 15% to be affordable. In other words, we are by design planning to not meet the affordable housing guidance for 2023. Is that correct?
Through the ordinance, we can't expect to produce all of the affordable housing needed. That's why we're doing the feasibility study, because affordability requirements of above 15% have generally made projects infeasible. So we have to, the city as a whole, or the city in proposing an ordinance, has to walk that line of creating affordable housing or through the ordinance, but also not disincentivizing the production of market rate housing.
Yes, thank you. I understand the difficulty, but I'm also pointing out that there is that gap, right?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Chair, I yield.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bhatnagar. All right, we're going to go into round 2 of 3 questions each. And I have Commissioner Ikezi and Commissioner Cherukuru after that. Go ahead, Yuki.
Thank you, Nancy. I looked at the text of SB 9 as soon as the governor signed it, and there is a I think SB 9 comes in 2 sections. Number 1 is that it allows duplexes on a single family lot now. And then the second section is about subdividing. But anyway, so in the first section, it is left up to each city to decide whether to allow accessory unit and junior accessory unit on top of the duplex construction. So what is the city leaning toward?
It was only signed last week, and we haven't formulated a way forward at this point. We're meeting next week to talk it through with Xander.
Oh, I see. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, Yuki. Okay, Commissioner Cherukuru.
Thank you, Chair. So I have 2 questions. How does the university housing play into our housing counts?
Yeah, and this is something that I think we need a tiny bit more clarity on, because yeah, we just need to figure out whether it really, if it's group housing and it's not part of the typical RHNA production numbers, or if it's something that we can count towards typical housing targets. So that's a question to be answered through the housing element process.
But typically Santa Clara University's housing would be in our RHNA numbers, right? Irrespective of what their typology is, the housing counts, do they add? Like if the university is building new student housing, would it add to our numbers? I'm trying to understand if it comes under the city's RHNA numbers itself.
I'm going to defer to Xander on that one.
And I'm going to write down a note that I need to research that. Let you know the next meeting.
Okay, only because I know other university, more popular, name unsaid, comes within the counts for housing element. It was a huge and probably several litigations still underway. But I just wanted to understand how Santa Clara University numbers with joins our RHNA. That's one question, so I'd like a little more clarification. And 2, I believe, John, you were going to talk about the health equity and the, what is it called? The, what communities? The disadvantaged communities, and the implication of that. And you answered another question in your comment on the affordable housing, 15%. but if you could elaborate on what the disadvantaged community
Well,
requirements are.
we do have to come up with an environmental justice element as a part of this. Yeah, that include goals and policies to lessen the plight of disadvantaged communities within the city. Disadvantaged communities were subject to environmental hazards. So that's one of the things that we'll have to do as part of this housing element.
And it's part of your feasibility study, or
it's part of the housing element update itself.
And okay, and we do have a community that you're going to study more in depth, is what you mentioned.
Right, but these policies will apply citywide.
Got it. Okay. And last comment or question is, how is City of Santa Clara availing the county housing program, especially for homeless? There was $1 billion ballot measure that passed to allow. And to Commissioner Bhatnagar's point earlier, is that an option to actually fill the delta of meeting our numbers if we are able to allow for more land or how the city land that can be used for homeless housing or low-income housing through that program, through the county housing program?
Yeah, that's a potential avenue, and I think those are questions that we need to talk to our housing division to see where they're at. And Rena, if you have more information.
No, I think one of the more recent projects, the Freebird project on Monroe, that the commission looked at, I think within the last year, that leveraged county funding. Our housing division is partnering with the county quite a bit on different sites to leverage funding that they have access to help build 100% affordable or large proportionate affordable housing projects. So it's something that we are definitely, and the housing division, they're taking lead on this, and we do work as planning through the entitlement process. What you'll see is that the state has more requirements for ministerial approvals when it comes to transitional housing, for instance. There's funding such as the House Keys funding that if a particular project gets that funding source, then there is actually a ministerial process. So it's the state is doing a lot to try and facilitate transitional housing, as well as the city is working with the county and other funding sources to kind of, in the case of the Freebird site, that was a city site, and we are looking at city land to build affordable housing.
Yeah, so thank you, Rena. Thanks for that. I just saying, like, let's put that in the housing element to increase the delta, because I think it was a 56 unit or something, nominal. It wasn't a full on, it doesn't, but I'm asking
to get higher density. Yeah,
exactly. Increase the density, allow a little more, so we close the gap between what is required from our RENA numbers and allocations, because that's their only opportunity to meet state requirements. So that's just a thought. Okay, so I had 2 questions. Thank you, staff, for following up on this.
Sure.
That's I yield, Chair.
Oops. Thank you, Commissioner Terakuru. Commissioner Salim.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm something I heard in the presentation, that do ADUs automatically count as low-income housing?
No, they don't, but they're it's an area where we're working with our housing collaborative to figure out how much we can count. And we think it'll be more than the typical, the 15% that we're getting in market rate projects. We think that a sizable percentage of the ADUs can be counted towards affordable housing, but we're not sure what the number is at this point.
I'll just clarify a little bit. The planning collaborative is actually different cities in Santa Clara County. We're working to collaborate on our housing elements. And there has been survey work done of ADUs throughout the Bay Area to try and figure out just at market how affordable are ADUs. And that analysis is leading us to propose a breakdown where it's not 100% affordable, but I don't actually have the percentage breakdown, but it is based on this survey work where let's say 25% is at low income, 50% is at moderate, and 25% is above moderate. So it's based on the survey analysis. And please don't take those numbers. That wasn't intended to tell you what the breakdown is. It's just we're analyzing it, and that's what's feeding into how we're going to propose the breakdown of ADUs.
Okay. Well, that helps because I'm just trying to get in my head how quickly ADUs would qualify and count towards that target number if ADUs were a mechanism that people started employing right away. The second kind of technical question, what is the maximum square footage of a home where you're not required to have a 2-car garage? You can get by with a single car. I know it's a pop quiz. I couldn't find the answer. I know it's if you go up to 4 bedrooms and 5 and things that you automatically get the 2-car garage, but at what point can a 1-car garage suffice?
If so, under our current zoning code, if you have an existing 1-car garage, you can make an up to 500 square foot addition without providing additional parking. The zoning code update will increase that to 1,000 square feet, 1,000 square foot addition.
I'm actually going the other way. Let's use a hypothetical, right?
Right.
Let me say it. My 5-bedroom house gets scraped to the ground. My lot gets split, AB 10, I believe. I put up 2 3-bedroom houses. Are the 3-bedroom houses qualified to be single car or double car? And do those 2 3-bedroom homes have an automatic ability to each have an ADU so that this 11,000 square foot lot suddenly becomes 4 units? Do you see where I'm going? Is there a point at which my 2-car garage actually is no longer required in a smaller duplex style development, but it's not a duplex, it's just 2 separate homes where they can fall down to being a single car garage?
So if you're talking about SB9 and SB10, I mean, sorry, SB9 specifically, there actually are provisions that state that cities can ask for parking, but then say that if those particular parcels are within a certain distance, in my head, it's half a mile from high quality transit. And these are definitions. We would need to know what is high quality transit. Then actually the city cannot require parking. So it's really situational, but a lot of our city, depending on how high quality transit's actually defined by the state, may actually be within a half a mile of high quality transit as the state defines it. So there's a lot we need to sort of figure out about that.
I'm just scaring myself because I can picture this cul-de-sac that I live in suddenly going from 7 homes to 28, by splitting lots and adding ADUs. And there would be like people parked on top of each other trying to live here. Interesting. Thank you very much. I really would be curious to get some follow-up later on how the ADUs count, because I think that's going to start to become an issue for people in the future when they make their decisions on how to expand, whether they expand onto their own home or whether they simply build an ADU that's attached, which is already a jumble of confusion a little bit for what is and isn't allowed. But okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Salim. I have 2 comments. They're really more in the form of a comment. One was Commissioner Cherakuru, you hit exactly on a hot topic that came up during the APA conference as to whether or not university housing counted, and this doesn't apply to Santa Clara, whether prison beds counted. So I think it's great that we're going to have folks looking at it. The second comment I wanted to make, and this is for future look-sees, for lack of a better way of putting it, is something that I'm a little concerned about. When I look at some areas of the city that were the oldest sections, for example, the old quad, the pattern of development there was much different than the pattern of development in the more modern areas of the city, meaning probably something post World War II, and how SB 9 and 10 and the legislation that's in the mill is going to affect splitting lots, right? Because even though the Old Quad is not a historical district by official definition, splitting those lots could end up having a huge impact on preservation concerns in the city. So I'm sure Xander and the rest of staff will be looking closely at those kinds of issues. And I very much appreciate, as I think I can say it for all the commissioners, appreciate this study session tonight. What lies ahead, this is just the beginning. I don't see any other hands up. I'm gonna wait a second in case somebody had. I don't see anything. Then I think the recommendation was to note and file the report on the housing element update. Is that something that we're going to need a motion for? Staff?
Commissioner, Chair Biagini, there is someone's, a couple hands in the attendees.
Oh my God, I am so sorry. Okay, let's hear from them, please. My apologies.
Our first public speaker is David Vieira. And just a reminder to all public speakers, you do have 2 minutes on the clock. David, you have been unmuted.
Oh, there you go. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry. Sorry. My name is Dave Vieira, and my family and I own property located at 2050 Lafayette Street in Santa Clara. I appreciate the time this evening and all the time that you've put in to prepare this housing element update and the work that the Planning Commission does. My question is to the site inventory process that was mentioned earlier. For example, I'm just kind of curious, for example, our neighborhood at Lafayette Street, Parker Court, DeJulio, and Avila consists of roughly 39 parcels totaling over 12 acres that currently house over 100 families. We've had housing in our neighborhood for decades. And because of the various ownership interests of the individual parcels in our neighborhood, it's highly unlikely that these properties will ever become light industrial uses as our current ML zoning indicates. Because of this, these properties will likely remain residential in use, but not by right for the foreseeable future. I'm just curious, why can't we take this opportunity with the housing element update to address this situation of legal non-conforming use properties that have housing on them to work with us to allow us to be able to provide much needed affordable housing and allow it to be preserved, improved, and intensified. Particularly moderate income folks, which is most of our neighbors and our tenants there. So that was my question, and I just didn't know exactly how the site inventory process worked and how sites like ours could be a part of that and be considered in this. So again, I appreciate your time and consideration tonight. Thank you.
Was there someone who wanted to respond, or should we go to the next attendee?
I think we will look through our housing goals and policies, and especially as a part of the housing element update, and also as part of the environmental justice element. So yeah, we will look into some of those concerns as part of putting the housing element update together.
Thank you, John.
Our
And
next,
thank
sorry. Our next speaker is Events SVH. Just give us 1 second to get the timer up. Okay, you have been unmuted.
Yes, thank you. I apologize. Events is what happens when I have no control over my name. This is Matthew Reed from Silicon Valley at home. I'm also a resident of the city of Santa Clara. I want to first acknowledge the really great staff that you have and appreciate the commission's engagement on this topic. I want to raise some issues that I don't believe were addressed fully in the staff presentation. Number one, under SB 166, and these are just I do this a lot. So under the state law, when the siting map is developed, the city is going to actually have to identify the income category for each of the housing opportunity sites. And because there's a no net loss requirement, if market rate housing is built on these sites, the city is going to have to show where the affordable units that were not built but were planned will be located. So this is actually a real challenge to figure out what a feasible affordable site is. Second, under AB 686, which is the affirmatively furthering fair housing law, there's extensive requirements about outreach. There must be a standard AFH of assessment of fair housing in the housing element, but there also has to be explicit actions by the city in both siting and policy to affirmatively promote housing throughout the community that is integrated and balanced. There have to be metrics and objectives. Because the sites must be identified for affordability, there must be an assessment of feasibility. And I think it's very important that the commission recognize some of the challenges, even though there's a lot of capacity in the city. I'm assuming I got cut off. If I'm still live, there's a lot of capacity in the city, but there are challenges in putting together a conforming housing element in the current environment.
We heard you, Mr. Reed.
Great, thank you.
Comments from staff?
No, we acknowledge the challenges. I think everybody's feeling that way.
Anyone else?
Yes, we do have one last speaker, Kalisha Webster. Kalisha, you have been unmuted.
Thank you. So hello, commissioners. My name is Kalisha Webster. I'm a housing advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities with housing choices. As a direct service provider, helping people with developmental disabilities in Santa Clara find independent housing, as well as a CS assessment provider, we see firsthand every day the growing need for people with developmental disabilities to have access to independent housing as more group homes are closing and many are living at home with aging parents. Due to the limitations of their disability, many of our clients rely upon SSI with a maximum monthly payment of $9.55 per month as a major source of income. Those who do work typically are in low-wage part-time jobs, making it extremely difficult to qualify even for extremely low-income housing due to the high AMI in Santa Clara County. As the last commenter mentioned, one of the topics I noticed was missing from tonight's discussion is the city's requirement to affirmatively further fair housing and what the city is doing to meet this requirement. As Commissioner Cherukuro mentioned earlier, the city is required to plan specifically for the housing needs of special needs groups such as the homeless and people with IDD. If plans have not already been made, I would strongly encourage city planners to outreach specifically to these special needs groups to find out directly from them, one, what their concerns are and what their concerns and needs are, as well as the service providers who work directly with these individuals. I would also recommend, as the city reviews the affordable housing ordinance, that you consider ways to incentivize developers to create more supportive housing for these high needs populations, such as allowing for more flexible requirements for developers who include set-asides for people with developmental disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalisha. Anyone else I can't see if there's any attendees, so I rely on you staff to let me know if
There are no other hands raised.
Okay. Then I think at this point, we can conclude this study session. Does that require a motion to note and file?
I'll move to note and file.
Second.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, there you have it. Okay, let's move to reports of commission Board Liaison and Committee. The first item, announcements or other items. I have one of general interest. Goes a bit beyond Planning Commission, and I don't see any other hands up, and that is that there, of general interest, there is going to be another Santa Clara Parade of Champions happening Saturday, October 9th, running along Monroe and Benton. And if you go online, you can read more about it. That's the only announcement I have. Was there any other announcements or other items? Then we can move into Commissioner travel and training reports and requests to attend trainings. And the first one up is a request to consider using Planning Commission funds for parking lift technology training. Staff?
Yes, this is Rena. I wanted to share with the commission a potential opportunity for training. And I know that since we've also had some recent bills approved in the last week, I know there's some interest in other trainings, and we can get to that in a little bit. I did some research with specifically the topic of parking lifts. It's something that's been coming up in front of the commission. And I noticed at our last hearings, the commission asking a lot of really good questions about feasibility of parking lifts, best technologies of parking lifts, how do you mix parking lifts with EV requirements? And so I reached out to a design firm that specializes in all things sort of parking technology. That's Watry Design. They have an office in downtown San Jose. And I asked about what it would take to do a study session specifically on parking lift technologies. And they put together a proposal to do a study session. It would be approximately $2,500. I originally, before the pandemic, also asked them to look at the ideas around constructing parking structures that could be reused for alternative uses in the future. I know that was like a hot topic. And I didn't actually propose that to them this go around, but I'm sure there would be an additional cost if that was something we wanted to add to the mix of the training. But I could also go back and ask Watry Design if they would be interested in or available to kind of provide a more comprehensive training around that as well. But I wanted to bring this idea forward to the commission and see whether or not you wanted me to move forward. There are some procedural steps we need to do if we bring consultants on for these sessions. So just thought I would flesh that out a little bit first and then propose it to the commission if that's of interest.
Commissioner,
and I apologize for the background noise. Sorry.
That's all right. Commissioner Casey, you have your hand up.
Oh, thank you. That sounds like a great topic. I'd like to make a motion to allocate maybe $4,000 for the two topics that Nina suggested.
I don't know if we have handy the Planning Commission budget, what's remaining, because I know that there is also interest given these bills of SB 9 and SB 10, particularly SB 9. I'm sure the commission would like to also leverage funds to maybe help the city on those topics as well. And I just want to make sure we have sufficient funds. Gloria or Elizabeth, do you know what we have remaining in the balance?
Yes, actually what you have written in our report right now is we do have a balance of $15,627.
And Rita, you have the estimate correct with about 2,500 for
2,500 if it is just on the topic of parking lifts. If we augment that, I don't actually know what the amount is. I would have to go back to them and ask. But if you gave me an amount that you feel comfortable with, then I could obviously potentially execute that within that budget range that the commission feels comfortable with, if that was a topic of interest.
Yeah, that's why I suggested 4,000.
We need a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Huang. May I suggest, I don't know if this is a friendly amendment or if this is something you can include in it. Would it make sense, Yuki, since we're not real sure what the cost would be and we have other training probably coming up, if the motion was worded in such a way that said at a cost not to exceed 4,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds good.
We have Commissioner Bhatnagar.
Chair, thank you. Needless to point out, that's about 25% of the existing budget. Right? So I would refrain from saying whether this is a cost benefit analysis would justify the $4,000. In my opinion, I would certainly justify the $2,500. But anyways, those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
And I'll echo Commissioner Bhatnagar's comments. 2,500 already seems pretty pricey from an architectural firm for a study that, you know, they probably already have all the research knowing. So I would highly encourage staff to actually negotiate. But I do also I'm cognizant of the budget for the city, and 4,000 seems a little too cost prohibitive for just training for one topic plus one. But, you know, just for with the APA and with all other options, I suggest 2,500. That's just me.
Would that work for you, Commissioner Ikezi?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
And I was thinking, you know, the topic of even higher interest, the new laws, you know,
exactly.
Our council has always done a really great job. He studied it himself, and he always gave great presentations.
And he's free.
He's not free, but you know.
Okay, we have Commissioner Saleh has his hand up.
On that topic, I did want to mention, so I did coordinate just today with the city manager's office. The city council is also really interested. Chair Biagini, you know, and Commissioner Casey said, hey, we need study sessions on SB 9 and SB 10. The council is also really interested in this. So we do have a session that's tentatively scheduled for a joint study session with the Planning Commission and the City Council, and we'll have to work through to make sure that we have quorum with both bodies. But the date that's proposed is December 7th, which will give us a little bit of time internally to try and figure out all the specificities of these two new laws. But I just wanted you to know that that's something that we're working on, and Xander has not heard about this before. So we need to make sure he's available as well. But I just wanted you to know that there's some stuff underway to try and bring forward a joint study session and a date that's proposed.
And it's split
That
the
day's good
cost
for
kind
me.
of thing.
That day is good for me.
Okay, Commissioner Salim, you have your hand up.
This is going to be a very complicated motion before we're done. Along those exact lines, I was very eager to hear Xander speak to us from his perspective with our city's specific interests in mind on those new laws, 9, 10, and how they would interact with 35. Along those lines, I assume there may be expenses on gathering materials or secondary resources or whatever. These things could probably happen separately. We don't have to lump all of our financial authorization into one event or into one motion. So I would be highly motivated to clear the 2,500 for the parking issue separately and then address the other training in a later meeting or a special meeting or whatever is necessary to make it happen. Yeah, I think that's really all I can say about that. I desperately want to hear what Xander has to say about what we heard, because it wasn't very targeted to our specific situation. All right, thank you.
Point well taken, Commissioner Salim. Xander, you had a comment?
I'm curious to hear what I'm going to say as well.
Well, let me make a suggestion. Commissioner Cherukuri, I'm not sure, you still have your hand up for another comment? Oh, okay. I think, well, my personal feeling is it would make more sense to deal with the current motion separately, which, as I recall, Commissioner Casey is absolutely going to correct me if I'm wrong, would mean a training session on this specific issue at a cost not to exceed $2,500. And of course, if it's a joint session with the city council, perhaps they can split whatever the ultimate cost is, and then deal a separate motion, as you suggest, Commissioner Salim, because that's actually going to be a part of my report out on the APA conference.
I just wanted to clarify that the parking lift presentation wasn't intended to be the joint session with the council.
Okay.
I meant SB 9 and SB 10.
Okay.
That topic is of interest to the council, and that's the study session that we're trying to put a joint study session together on for December 7th, but still need to ensure that we have quorum and that key people like Xander are available.
Yeah. Can I throw a trailer? Can I throw a little trailer on that issue? Because you may want to invite the downtown task force, but not necessarily make them required for that session. Because I think it's going to affect a lot of different groups within our city. So thank you.
Okay, well then I think we can set that issue aside. I agree with you, Commissioner Salam. I think they're an important stakeholder in this, and we can deal with the motion at hand where we have a motion and a second on a cost not to exceed $2,500 to deal with the request for a session on park lift technology training. Did I say that right, Commissioner Akezi?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
The motion is by Commissioner Casey, seconded by Commissioner Wang. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Chair Biagini?
Yes.
Commissioner Cherukuri?
Yes.
Commissioner Wang?
Yes.
Commissioner Casey?
Yes.
Commissioner Salim?
Yes.
Commissioner Bhatnagar?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I would, if it's okay with everyone, I'll go ahead and give my report out on the APA conference. I know we had a couple of other commissioners in attendance, so I'm hoping they can join in with their comments later, because trying to synopsize the conference training in 10 words or less was not easy. So let me see if I can get through this pretty quickly. It really was a hugely informative conference conducted by the California chapter of the APA, APA being the American Planning Association. And as you can well imagine, with the legislation before us, we've been talking about it throughout tonight's meeting. Boy, was there a lot of questions raised by folks from cities all over the state. The topics were varied, but they were also staggered. So all topics can actually be viewed by participants post-conference for up to 1 month. And because they were staggered, that meant it wasn't like you got to pick between 3 conferences in Module 1 or another 3 in Module 2. You had stuff beginning and ending at different times. So I am in that process now of trying to catch up to all the other presentations. Here are the ones that I listened to. Tackling the homeless crisis in California. The obvious outcome of that one was coordination and collaboration is needed and necessary. 2, embracing AB 686, which is the affirmatively furthering fair housing topic. 3, objective design standards. Subtitle, goodbye discretion, hello certainty, which kind of bears repeating with things that are coming up down the road. 4, zoning for equity. Will ending exclusionary zoning solve the housing crisis? And the outcome, once again, and I think it again leads into what you were just talking about, Rena, was that a joint planning commission, council, public, I'm going to throw in downtown task force, would be greatly needed to talk about these issues. Next one, adapting to housing reform. How to prepare today to avoid unintended consequences tomorrow. The next one, very interesting topic, the Plex paradox, planning for multi-unit development in single unit zones. And I'll give it my own subtitle. We don't have a choice. It's now law that single family residences zoning can be a thing of the past in the state. And there are pieces of it that are out of the city's hands, but it doesn't mean there can't be collaborative minds put together to resolve some of the issues. The next one, the 2021 Diversity Summit, redefining tokenism. The next one, climate vulnerability and emergency management in California. Also, next one, opportunities and potholes for planners and staff in implementing new state housing laws. Again, joint study would be helpful here. The next one, the Betty Kroller Lecture, Transforming California's Cities Through Inclusive Historic Preservation. Also watched Resources for Becoming a Better Planning Commissioner. And finally, the 2021 CEQA update. And that is probably less than half of the topics that were conducted during that 2.5-day conference. The bottom line, as I saw it, is what lies ahead looks a lot to be the end of single family resident zoning. In a way that I suspect most residents don't currently realize that, and it has nothing to do really with the choices that city employees or commissioners or staff make or prefer. There are mandated laws now that have been signed, due in large part to the history of the increasing issue of homelessness and the ripple effects of traffic, climate, water resources, and the like. And a Bay Area example of how this has come to pass goes something like this. For every 6 jobs that came in, only 1 residential unit was available. The need for housing is greatly surpassing the housing and rental units available, is what ends up happening as the job market here grows. You got to add the issue of housing affordability, add traffic nightmares created by long commutes when you can't have affordable housing close to where the jobs are. Then you've got the resource issues like water. We have these kinds of problems that are increasingly getting mandates put around them by the state. And sometimes it feels as if it's taken away our choice. So it's going to be a really bumpy ride going into the future. But as I saw it, and I would welcome Commissioners Salam and Huang to join in with their comments on it, you know, the blame game isn't going to help, but it's going to be something that's real easy to do when you get nervous. Rather than celebrating problems, I think we really need to put our collaborative brains together to create solutions, giving some of the new state mandates. And therein is my report on the APA conference. And I see Commissioner Salam's hand up. Please, you're on.
Okay, well, the good news is that everything you said, I think I went to about 75% of the same sessions, only because of the timing that you've mentioned. And I heard all of the words, and I took them to heart. This is why I'm so eager to have our city's perspective layered on top of the laws that were proposed, or the laws that are enacted, actually. And part of some of the things that you didn't cover were around solar adoption and battery storage, and things that cities are proposing now for emergency sustainability for a city in a crisis situation, also for global warming response. A lot of that is something we probably need to look forward to and get ready for, especially with Silicon Valley Power influencing us, or influencing the process. The things that were more interesting to me is that all of the proposals and the presentations were geared around the idea of a utility like PG&E, high volume, high price, where solar and battery are totally competitive. But when you come to a situation like Silicon Valley Power in Santa Clara, where we're at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, we can't compete. We can't afford solar, but we can't afford not to go solar. So the city's going to need to come up with ways to help incentivize adoption of these technologies and these forward-looking solutions. Part of it was the complaint that there were no open lands to put solar farms on, but they totally missed the opportunity to put up solar park cover. So in big parking lots and things, shaded parking with solar panels. It's not rocket science, but they seem to miss it completely. I highly recommend that anybody who wants to view some of these sessions can talk to any of us that were there, because I believe, and I think Elizabeth might be able to confirm or deny this, but I believe that each one of us had the opportunity to invite a second person. So we could invite another commissioner to be able to view the sessions. And I think if any of you want to try doing that, I'd be more than happy to give you my second half. And with Nancy and our Chair Biagini and any other attendees, I think Commissioner Hong. Yeah.
Yes.
I think he's going to want to speak on this also, so I'll stop talking. But definitely, please watch some of the key sessions, and the CEQA update were extremely important to us, and it's going to hit us very hard coming very soon. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Suleiman. By the way, Nancy works for me. Commissioner Huang?
Hi, yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, yeah, I think it was a pretty good conference. I think you two, summarized most of it. But one thing worries me is the water resources. Yeah, that's, I really worries me. But another thing, I think for this conference is but before they mentioned they are going to send out email, but I haven't received. I believe Commissioner Selan also didn't receive any email. And they also promised send out email after the conference. I haven't received anything either. So I don't know if you guys received any email. So yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, just if we can have some email, give us the link, point us to the sessions, I think that will help. Yeah, actually, yeah, I spent a long time before the conference to find the resources. Yeah, thanks. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Huang. I see Priya's hand up. Commissioner Jeriguru.
Just wanted to say thank you so much for that incredible summary report. It takes quite a lot, but I'd like to take up Commissioner Lance's offer. I can be that second invitee. I have been a huge proponent of APA. I'm a member of APA with requirements behind my ARCP, so I completely second everybody to take this opportunity to look at it, at least understand there's a lot of information in the planning realm, changes with COVID, urban densification, there's just wealth that's coming out. So
okay.
I'll take your offer up, Lance.
I'll dig out. I think it's just a matter of reusing the confirmation number with your information, and then that'll count as the second. So we'll go from there. Thank you.
And Lance, it's Elizabeth. I'll help you out with that. I really don't recall anything about this, but I'll take a look at the website and see what they have.
Yeah, because the email actually had the info embedded in it. It says this registration is good for 2.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And Elizabeth, not that I want to add to your workload, but I'm more than willing to, for anyone who would likewise want to take part in some of the topics that were discussed during this APA conference. And I'm wondering if, again, I don't want to add to your workload, if any other commissioner is interested to be my second guest, if we can work all that through you, Elizabeth.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think what I'll do, maybe try to coordinate this. Give me a day or so and let me send an email to all of you so we can see where we're at and we'll get that going.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Fair to spend a considerable number of hours, though. I think for Commissioner Biagini and myself, it was all day long from 7:30, 8 o'clock until late evening. So it's quite an event.
And Commissioner Bhatnagar, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to take up the offer like Commissioner Cherukuru and see if I could get that also studied up. That'd be helpful to me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, no other hands up then. Are there any other requests for trainings? Seeing none, then I will move to the Director of Community Development reports, and we start with Planning Commission budget update. I think we kind of already got that.
Right, we already covered that, so I saw your.
So we can move past that. How about upcoming agenda items?
We have switched our permit system, so I apologize. I don't know how to track now the pending projects.
Gloria, I know actually I was going to tell the commission the next planning commission meeting on October 13th. We actually do not have any projects that are scheduled to go in front of the commission. However, now that I have the approval to move forward with the study session with Watry Design, I was going to ask them if they could present to us on October 13th. So I will circle back. Otherwise, if they aren't able to turn around the presentation that quickly, then we may be asking to actually cancel this particular meeting. But we do know that we have other study sessions that aren't yet scheduled that are coming up and plenty of projects. It's just the timing of October 13th isn't when projects are due. So I'm going to circle back with Watry and see if we can make it for the 13th. Otherwise, we will be canceling that meeting.
Okay, we shall stay tuned. Thank you, Rena. Then let's proceed to City Council actions.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The only item that was heard that was also reviewed by the Planning Commission since your last meeting is the action on the rezoning from PD to PD at the 190 North Winchester Boulevard. That's the senior housing project that was requested to convert to all ages and have the senior housing component removed as a requirement for that development. And so there was quite a bit of debate, and there was actually a motion by Commissioner Becker to deny the request, but after negotiating, they basically included what the commission had recommended, which is the 15% affordable housing component at 100% AMI. And the requirement for a security gate. So that motion ended up being approved. And that was really it. That was the only item that was pertains to the commission.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. Then I think we were at the adjournment. Are there any, do I need to call for a motion, or can I just say if there's no objections, we can adjourn for the evening? And I don't see any objections. So, okay, Rena, we will wait to hear from you whether or not October 13th is on for all of us. And besides that, thank you, everyone. And to those that have been sitting and listening, much appreciated. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.